Look at a map of the world's oil. Now put your finger on one narrow gap of water, just 21 miles wide at its tightest point, sitting between Iran and the small nation of Oman. That gap has a name, the Strait of Hormuz. Every single day for decades, roughly a fifth of all the oil the entire planet burns has passed through that gate. Tankers, one after another, sailing so close to Iranian waters that a fishing boat could reach them in minutes. And for over 40 years, one country has held a simple, terrifying card in its hand. We can close this. Today, we are going to understand why, not just the politics, the actual history, the ships that sank, the plane that was shot down by mistake, the war that never quite starts but never quite ends either. By the end of this video, you will understand why a stretch of water you have probably never thought about might be the single most dangerous choke point on earth. Here is the strange part. Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz more times than almost anyone can count. In the 1980s, in 2008, in 2011, in 2018 and 2019, and now again in 2026. Generals have gone on television and promised it. Warships have squared off nose to nose in these waters, and yet for most of that history the strait never actually fully closed. Oil kept moving, ships kept sailing. So why does Iran keep making this threat if it rarely follows through? What actually happens when the threat becomes real, and why does this single stretch of water matter so much to a taxi driver in Dhaka, a factory in Germany, and a grocery store in Ohio all at the same time? To answer that, we have to go back before the missiles, before the mines, to a revolution that changed everything. First, the geography. Because geography in this story is the weapon. The Persian Gulf is almost a closed body of water, a long arm of the sea reaching up between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. Inside that arm sit some of the largest oil reserves ever discovered. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Iran itself. But there is only one way out, one door, and that door is the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest, the strait is about 21 nautical miles across. The shipping lanes inside it, the safe channels tankers are actually allowed to use, are even tighter, just a couple of miles wide in each direction, separated by a buffer zone. Think about what that means. Every tanker leaving Saudi Arabia, every tanker leaving Kuwait, nearly every tanker leaving Iran has to funnel through this one narrow gate, and for part of that journey, it sails through Iranian territorial waters whether it wants to or not. Roughly a quarter of the world's seaborne oil moves through here. Add in liquefied natural gas, and you are talking about a huge share of the energy that heats homes, powers factories, and fuels the trucks that bring food to your table, no matter what country you live in. There is no easy detour pipeline exists that bypass the strait through Saudi Arabia, through the UAE, but they can only carry a fraction of what the tankers move. If Hormuz truly closed, the world would not simply reroute, it would run short. That is the leverage, not a large army, not a powerful navy, just geography and the will to use it. The first time this leverage turned into real bloodshed was during the Iran-Iraq War, which raged from 1980 to 1988. Iraq under Saddam Hussein started attacking ships carrying Iranian oil, trying to strangle Iran's economy. Iran responded the way you would expect a concerned power to respond. It began attacking ships trading with Iraq's allies, including tankers that belonged to neutral countries that had nothing to do with the war. This phase became known as the Tanker War. Over those years, more than 400 ships were attacked. Over 200 of them were oil tankers. Sailors from countries with no stake in the conflict died simply because their ship happened to be in the wrong lane at the wrong time. Iran threatened again and again to close the strait entirely. It never did, but it came close to something that as dangerous, making the strait so unsafe that insurance costs soared and captains grew afraid to sail it at all. The United States stepped in to protect Kuwaiti tankers, reflagging them under the American flag so US warships could escort them. The decision pulled Washington directly into the shadow of this conflict, and it set the stage for the darkest chapter of the whole story. On April 14, 1988, the American frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts struck an Iranian mine in the Gulf. The explosion nearly broke the ship in half, though the crew saved it. 4 days later, the US launched Operation Praying Mantis, a single brutal day of naval combat. American forces destroyed Iranian oil platforms, sank an Iranian frigate, and damaged much of what remained of Iran's navy. It remains one of the largest surface naval battles the US Navy has fought since the Second World War. Then, less than 3 months later, came the tragedy that still shadows the strait to this day. On July 3, 1988, Iran Air Flight 655, a civilian passenger plane carrying 290 people, including 66 children, took off from Bandar Abbas, heading to Dubai. It flew directly into the radar picture of the USS Vincennes, an American warship that had just been in a skirmish with Iranian patrol boats, believing mistakenly that the airliner was an attacking fighter jet. The Vincennes fired 2 missiles. Every single person on board was killed. The United States called it a tragic accident born from confusion in the middle of combat. Iran called it something closer to a crime. The two governments have never fully agreed on what happened that morning, and that disagreement is still felt in how each side tells this story. What both sides do agree on is the human cost: 290 people gone in a war that both nations were by then desperate to end. Weeks later, in August 1988, Iran accepted a United Nations ceasefire. The Iran-Iraq War, one of the deadliest conflicts on the 20th century, with roughly 2 million people killed on both sides combined, was finally over. You might expect that after 1988, this story would quiet down. It didn't. Of the following decades, the Strait of Hormuz became something like a pressure gauge for the entire relationship between Iran and the West. Every time tensions rose over Iran's nuclear program, over sanctions, over regional conflicts, the threat to close the strait rose it. In 2011 and 2012, as new sanctions targeted Iran's oil exports, Iranian officials warned openly that if the world tried to stop Iran from selling its oil, Iran would make sure no one else could sell theirs either. The US Navy responded by making clear it would keep the strait open by force if necessary. In 2019, tensions spiked again. Iran's Revolutionary Guard seized foreign tankers, limpet mines, damaged ships near the strait's entrance. In incidents that were never fully publicly resolved to everyone's satisfaction, the US blamed Iran. Iran denied it. A senior Iranian naval commander said plainly that if Iran was blocked from using the strait for its own oil exports, it would simply close it for everyone. And still, through all of this, the strait never fully shut. Scholars and analysts studying this pattern have long pointed out something important. Iran benefits more from the threat of closure than from actually closing it. A closed strait cuts off Iran's own oil exports too. Iran depends on this water just as much as its rivals do. So for decades, this was less a plan Iran intended to carry out and more a form of pressure, a way of saying if you corner us, we can make everyone bleed with us. that most historians agree is the real logic behind Hormuz. Deterrence through shared vulnerability, not a genuine desire to strangle world trade. But in 2026, something actually changed. In late February 2026, the United States and Israel launched military strikes against Iran. What followed was described by energy analysts as the largest disruption to the global oil market in modern history. Iran did not merely threaten this time. Starting in early March, Iranian forces used drones, missiles, and first attack boats to strike vessels attempting to pass through the strait. Insurance for ships transiting the waterway became either unavailable or so expensive that shipping companies simply stopped sending crews through. In fact, not by formal declaration alone, but by sheer danger, the strait became closed. Tanker traffic collapsed to a fraction of its usual levels. The consequences rippled outward immediately. Energy analysts estimated oil output from the region fell by more than 14 million barrels a day, described at the time as one of the largest supply shocks markets had ever recorded. Even countries far from the Gulf, even nations that don't buy Iranian or Saudi oil directly felt it. Because oil is traded on a single global market, a shock anyway becomes a price spike everywhere. For weeks, hundreds of tankers sat stranded in the Gulf, unwilling to risk the passage. Briefly, in mid-April, Iran's government declared the strait reopened only for the Revolutionary Guard to reverse that decision within a single day and shut it again. The uncertainty itself became a weapon. No shipping company could plan, no insurer could price the risk confidently, and that uncertainty pushed costs even higher than the attacks alone might have. It's worth pausing here to say plainly these are recent, still developing events, and by the time you are watching this, the situation may look different again. What we can say with confidence is this: for the first time in over 40 years of threats, the world watched the thing everyone always said would never really happen start to happen. So why does all of this matter to you wherever you are watching from? Because oil doesn't stay local. When tankers stop moving through Hormuz, the price of crude oil rises worldwide, not just in the countries that buy directly from the Gulf. Higher oil prices mean higher prices for gasoline, for diesel, for the plastic in your phone case, for the fertilizer that grows your food, for the ships that carry your country's imports. Roughly a fifth to a quarter of the world's oil and a fifth of its liquefied natural gas depends on this one gate staying open. There is no shortcut around that number. A handful of pipelines exists, but together they can carry only a small fraction of what the tankers move. That's why for over 40 years, warships from the United States, Britain, and other nations have patrolled these waters almost continuously. That's why a single Iranian general statement on television can move oil prices within hours. That's why even when nothing dramatic is happening, the world's shipping insurers, oil traders, and defense ministries never stop watching the Strait of Water. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a place on a map, it is one of the few points on Earth where a regional conflict can become a global economic shock within days, sometimes within hours. And that is why, whether the guns are firing or silent, this narrow gap of water remains one of the most closely watched places on the entire planet. If this history surprised you, if you didn't know how close the world has come to a real closure of the strait more than once, that is exactly why this channel exists. We take the headlines you have scrolled past and give you the full story behind them. If you really enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe, and let us know how you felt about this history in the comment box. We'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.